Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to Park Library for hosting this Artist Talk series, and to Dean Kathy Irwin. Yes?
So when she's talking, can I, like, if I'm thirsty, like, refill my water?
Yes, of course. Yeah, please feel free to get refreshments as you need to. Yeah, thank you for asking. Feel free to help yourself to refreshments as the night is going on in a quiet, respectful, non-invasive way. But thank you to Dean Kathy Irwin, the Dean of Park Library, for supporting this Artist Talk series. And I really like to always emphasize, especially to all of you, for coming out to support these series and showing us that you value the artist's voice and being able to listen to the artists share the stories of their work. It's a really, at all times in the world, it's important that we listen to the voice of artists. But I feel like now more than ever, we really need to connect into the hearts and voices of artists and let that energy kind of guide us through some of this turmoil that we might be experiencing. So with that, it's just such an honor to have Teresa Dunn here with us and to host her work in the gallery. Teresa, I'm flying around with my straps here. Teresa was recently on campus as the juror for our student show over in the University Art Gallery, and we put together a beautiful, Anne and company put together a beautiful show of some wonderful student work over there recently. And before that, she was also in town as a juror for Art Walk Central through Art Reach and the local arts community. That's how we actually met. She came to the gallery during that, and that's where I had the opportunity to meet Teresa. So she's old friends here with Mount Pleasant. But it's just really a great gift to have her and her work here in the gallery, not just for its skillful and vibrant and like really beautiful lush palettes and all these beautiful expressions and portraits, but for the unique human stories that they share and for the humanity that they share, for the captured biographies and the narratives and the depiction of all these different personal, unique identities and the legacies that they have to share being sort of memorialized and left for the future through the stories that she's telling here. I feel so strongly that we all, as humans, just really at our cores want to be seen, want to be heard, want to be known, and want to know that our lives and our actions and the things that we do matter, that our stories matter. And I think what Teresa's doing is so important, that she is telling the stories of individuals. She is capturing moments and narratives and the humanity of others in a way that allows us to sort of peek in and get curious and relate. And if we get to see a face that shares or is relatable to us, then we get a window into a sense of shared humanity. And when we don't relate, we also have a window into a sense of shared humanity. And I just love the idea that we get to all sort of just peer into these individual narratives and stand with awe and admiration and give pure attention and witness to this humanity and be a part of the shared humanity through all these varying expressions, interactions, traditions, and just all that she's chosen to highlight for us here. So while I know that these gorgeous paintings can stand alone in depicting these potent narratives, I'm just really grateful that we have Teresa here with us tonight to share her story and to share the stories of these people as she wishes. So I'll keep this pretty brief and I'll just share her bio and then pass the mic over to Teresa. So Teresa Dunn is a Mexican-American artist raised in rural southern Illinois. Her identity, life, and art are influenced by her racial and cultural heritages and by the complexities of being a brown woman in the Midwest. Teresa received her MFA from Indiana University in Bloomington in 2002. She is a 3-time recipient of the Elizabeth Greenshields Foundation Fellowship and received the Jacob K. Javits Fellowship from the U.S. Department of Education. Teresa is affiliated with Galerie Les Chaudet in Paris, France, and she appears in More Disruption, Representation in Flux by John Seed, and was recently Included in Verified, a curated exhibition at the Cincinnati Art Museum. She exhibits widely and is currently a professor of painting and drawing at Michigan State University in East Lansing, where she has taught since 2006. Please join me in giving Teresa a warm welcome.
Thank you, Denise. Can you all hear me? Thank you so much, Denise, for the warm welcome and for inviting me to show in your beautiful gallery. And thanks to everyone for coming and seeing the work and coming to listen to my thoughts on my paintings, life experience, and what I hope to do through my artwork. So before I start talking about the paintings, I want to share a little bit more about my experience being a person in the world and starting from the time where I was very small. As Denise mentioned, I'm Mexican American. My mom's Mexican, my dad is American, and I have two brothers. We grew up in southern Illinois in a largely white community in a really small town at the edge of the Shawnee National Forest and with cornfields on the other side. And much of my childhood was peppered with discomfort because I didn't understand why people would comment on my skin or my appearance, ask me, where are you from, what are you, things of that nature. And because I saw through the world through the lens of my family, and though my mom is Mexican, she has very pale skin. Our family is a range of light skin to darker browns, but my immediate family, my dad's white, my brothers are white and look very American, and my mom is pale skinned also. So I saw my world through a lens of whiteness and through my white community that I grew up in. And I viewed myself as being part of that community and viewed myself as white, although I knew I was Mexican American and I really valued that heritage. I didn't understand myself as a brown kid, and I didn't understand why people couldn't pronounce my name properly. And growing up, I was Teresita, which means little Teresa, and most people besides my family could not pronounce it correctly. And so I always felt isolated or different than my peers, than my family, and it took me actually many years, maybe about 4 decades, to really come to terms with why. I didn't understand why total strangers would stop me, even in Michigan, not too many years ago. People play the guessing game because I have a sense that I'm racially ambiguous. And they ask where I'm from, stop me on the street, and with no previous connection. And that always troubled me. And in the last, 8 to 9 years, the political climate in this country has really amped up questions of difference and identity that made me really uncomfortable. And I had to come to terms, and in a good way, come to terms with, actually, I am a brown woman. Actually, these are issues that I recognize where they're coming from, that as a kid I didn't have the language to understand why there was this constant questioning of where I fit. And if I wasn't from here, where was I from? And I was from here. I am from here. I grew up in the US. But if others didn't see me as being a part of this country, how do I fit? And my painting, I've been painting for about 2.5 decades now. It's like each year that passes, ooh, that's been a long time doing this thing. But I've always been painting narratives and stories. I love people, painting stories. I think of myself as a storyteller, but my narratives were kind of ambiguous in what the stories were about. But as 2015-16 rolled around, I began to think more about, again, my own identity and the identities of others and the complicated things that were happening in our country, and wanting to celebrate difference, celebrate the different backgrounds that we're from, and the title of this exhibition is Us, U-S, both capital letters. And people have asked, well, does that mean U.S. or does it mean us? And I'm like, yes, because we're all part of what it means to be an American. It isn't just the dominant white narratives that we see largely promoted in music, in movies, television, books. Like, what are the narratives that are part of what we are as a community, as a culture, are so much broader and deeper. And the kind of conflict that I experienced as a kid, other people, especially black and brown people, have parallel stories, very similar stories of feeling like they are not accepted for who they are, or challenges based on who they look like, where they're from, what their voice sounds like, what their name is. And so I wanted to make paintings that began to explore that idea and embrace difference. And so I put out just a call on social media for my black and brown friends who wanted to volunteer. I also included immigrants and people with multicultural backgrounds as part of that call, like wanting to share their story and be part of my project, where I would help paint what it meant for them to be a person in this country, and whether they wanted to talk about positive experiences, negative experience, the conflict between them, the tension of being somebody who's outside of those dominant narratives. And I got a lot of people wanting to volunteer, or volunteering friends of them. So the earliest paintings, and actually most of the paintings in this room, began actually right as the pandemic was beginning. So a lot of it on Zoom, or sitting outside on the porch with somebody, just having a conversation and asking people, like, what do you want to communicate about your experience in the world? And so people would just, we'd have a conversation about the things they thought were important about their life experience, that made them feel sometimes proud, sometimes conflicted or confused, sometimes beautiful, but this whole range of possible emotions or experiences that make up a life, for better or for worse, all of it. And those conversations were really interesting, emotional at times. And after the conversations, if I was local to the person, I would take photographs of them that were based on the things that they were sharing with me. If they were not local, I'd ask them to stage some photographs and do certain things, and they'd send me pictures, and began to generate the ideas for the majority of the paintings that you see in the room. And most of the conversations were an hour, hour and a half, a couple hours. Sometimes we'd have deeper conversations beyond that. And I see all of the work in this project as a collaboration between myself and the people I'm representing. They're all real people, they all have real stories, and they're all really important stories to be made visible. And it's really important to me in the work that the people who are in the paintings see themselves accurately portrayed, that their stories are meaningful and valid, and that they see themselves. And it's also important to me that the viewers that come to my paintings can recognize themselves. And that's an experience that I have, or that's something that I feel, or I did a lot of people's responses to various paintings were like, I thought I was the only one, or just to see something in artwork is validating and representing those kind of stories is really, really important to me. So when the paintings were in progress, sometimes I would send an image to the person, especially if I wasn't sure if this is capturing right what they told me in our conversations. And most of the time they're like, yes, that's it. Sometimes they had a comment, that's not exactly it. Could you or talk about it differently? It wasn't quite that way. And we worked together to make these paintings be really full-bodied expressions of the people in the paintings. And the titles also are a part of that. Each painting has a title and then a subtitle that acknowledges the name of the person or people in the paintings. And each title has kind of a broader general title that thinks about the larger cultural impact. And so that's in like an overview of where the larger body of work that you're seeing in the gallery. And this is probably about maybe half of the half to two-thirds of the paintings in this body of work. And some are other places, some are have sold in the time being, but you're seeing a large proportion of the show, and you can look online either on Instagram or my website if you want to see all the paintings in this body of work. A few of them are newer, that they were inspired by the series Us, and the last painting in that series, it was called A Long Line of Women. This painting also has a subtitle, A Long Line of Women, but the original Long Line of Women is in the Broad Art Museum right now in East Lansing. And that painting kind of recognized that most of the participants in my project were women. And I think, I'm looking around the room, and only one of these paintings is a story of a man. And that wasn't a conscious choice, but maybe it's that most of my friend groups are women. I know a lot of women of color. Maybe they felt comfortable sharing their stories with me. There are more men in the project, but just in this room, only one of these paintings represents a man's story. But the reason that the Long Line of Women, as I started thinking about, I want to get all these women together because women are often marginalized, and for a variety of reasons. And so I began to think about like celebrating women, our connections to each other, not just through genetics or blood, but through friendship, through mentorship across history, and the powerful connections that I saw beginning to stitch themselves through my different paintings of women who had, again, not identical experiences, but parallel kind of challenges. And so the painting that you see behind me, the one with the umbrella and the beach, and the self-portrait back there at the bluish teal background, those are the most recent paintings and have verged on the question of like really thinking about celebrating solidarity of women, and especially marginalized women. So also the other thing that I want to say is that I am happy to have this be a dialogue and a conversation too. So the first part of the talk is giving you that little bit of background, but the second part I want to talk about individual paintings and give you a little bit more backstory, have you ask questions that you're interested in about paintings, or if there are paintings that you want me to talk about. We can talk about all of them, but if there are ones you want to talk about first, or there are things that you think are really interesting, or things that you want to comment on that feel relevant to you as a person, I would love to have that conversation. And to me, that's what a lot of this is about, is extending the dialogue, creating spaces for people to be seen, as Denise said, and to feel validated in our uniqueness and celebrate that. I was kind of looking around the room and thinking, what's the earliest painting in here? The earliest painting in the project is not in this show, but maybe we'll start. I'll give us a start, and we can kind of, if you either want to move your chair or turn your chair, we can move to the painting with the waves, the vertical one on this wall. And then we'll chat about that. And then I'm going to ask for volunteers if you want to talk about a specific painting. If we don't get any volunteers, I will choose, but I would really like for you guys to take an active role here. And I like conversation, and I like to hear people's observations and thoughts. So whatever you have to say is important to me. So I'm going to move over to this side real quick. The title of this painting is The Ballad of Asia Moore, Ode to Zora Neale Hurston. And Asia was one of my students. She took painting classes with me. She's an artist. She's a photographer, though. just getting her got her MFA from the Georgia State University, is an incredible photographer and a really magnificent person. And Asia was one of the first people that agreed to be part of the project. And I knew her for some time before we started painting, so I knew she had a lot of conflict about her blackness. She made a lot of her, all of her artwork is about being black, and it was filled often with conflict about how to feel proud of that. And when we had a conversation about it, she said one of the first times she really internalized that pride was after reading a Zora Neale Hurston writing. Oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on the title. Oh my gosh. What? No, somebody else. The one where the quote that a lot of people take is, and I'm paraphrasing, but you can look up the quote, is that I feel most black in front of a sharp white background. And oh my goodness, somebody pull up their phone and look for, I don't know why I'm blanking, but anyway, reading that writing really inspired in Asia to look inward and identify what it was about herself that she loved of being black. She loved her hair, she loved her skin, she also loved feeling more black. And I read the writing. Anyone found it yet?
Is it How It Feels to Be
Yes,
Colored Me?
How It Feels to Be Colored Me, yes. Beautiful writing. It's more like an essay length, and the writing is so visual, and it's so poetic, but it's not written in, it's prose writing, so it's not rhyming, but it's a powerful imagery. And after reading that and talking to Asia, when we went to take photographs, this was actually during the pandemic, so we were doing the outside thing, and right outside her apartment complex was a white fence. It was perfect, and I had her just do a variety of poses, and she was wearing clothes that she felt powerful in, and earrings that say love with the shape of Africa for the O. And I began to, after we did the photo shoot and I was looking at all these wonderful photos of Asia, have this visualization that I needed to put the fence in and make it really sharp. And Zora Neale Hurston talks about the waters of the Hudson. Although I don't think they crash in waves this big, I wanted them to have like a powerful impact in the way that her personality is very, like it's quiet and strong at the same time, and it's powerful and yielding at the same time. And if you read How It Feels to Be Colored Me, then you'll notice there's a part where Zora talks about feeling like a brown bag of miscellany with all of these things inside it, and she mentions all of these objects that you find on the ground underneath Asia's feet. And so it began to be a poetic interpretation of Asia's relationship to that writing, and wanting to depict her in a way that amplified her beauty and her strength. So I mean, each painting comes about in its own way, but I couldn't decide. Like some people ask about like why is there two of Asia, and like I couldn't decide because there's something really beautiful about the standing pose. There's something vulnerable about that, and then the kind of squatting pose. There's a confidence in it, and also she's actually, maybe this isn't true for all of you in the audience, but she's close to eye level, and it's a tender look. It's a confident look, and I wanted to include both of those images together. Also, in all of the paintings in this series, I paint the title into the painting, and I have never done that before, but I felt it really important to both include the name of the person and my subtitle, in this case, Ode to Zora Neale Hurston, because of how important those two things are. Asia as an individual and her relationship to that writing, and maybe someone who has never read Zora Neale Hurston would. They might be curious about Asia as a person, as an artist. And I think about that, like especially there's several artists who are in these paintings and trying to call attention to them as wonderful human beings. So, does anybody have a question about this painting? Yes.
Not that particular painting,
Yeah.
and but it's a technical question. I'm just really impressed with your colors, and I was wondering what kind of light do you have in your studio?
Yeah, so the question, if you couldn't hear, was about the colors and the light in my studio. And I mean, I have a big window. It's a small studio, big window, so there's always daylight filtering in. I'm a daytime painter. I can't stay up late. But I also have lights that point up to the ceiling. But in terms of the color of the paintings, I oftentimes will paint a color over the whole canvas before I do anything to it. So I like the way it sets a tone. And for this painting, it was this blue undertone. So I envisioned the waters of the Hudson, and she was wearing like the blue jeans and this slightly teal shirt. So those like really cool blue greens were the foundation of the color. Other times I'll choose a color that feels maybe opposite, so I want to create more tension. But I really love color and using it to be when it catches people's attention, but it can amplify an emotion, it can amplify a time of day or a mood. But I think every single piece in here, except the one painting that's on the white ground over there, had a color painted as the underpainting before I started.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that lock on the right mean?
So in
Or
the
the keyhole?
yeah, in the writing, it talks about a keyhole, I believe, without a like an old keyhole without a door. So it's a reference to the writing, how it feels to be colored me. So that everything actually in the painting besides Asia is a reference to that writing.
I wish I could paint like this now. All these things are so inspirational. It's like pretty colors.
Thank you. I saw some other hands go up. Who else had a question? No?
I was gonna ask about the keyhole also.
Okay, all right. Should we talk about another painting? Is there one you want to chat about?
I like that.
Which painting would you like to talk about?
Me?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, yes, okay.
All right, so we'll just move over here. We'll come back to that one. So this painting is called A Day in the Life, or Sherman Hsiao, Allegory of a Sucker Punch. And I met Sherman at an artist residency about 7 years ago. He's an artist, he's a painter, mostly painting in watercolor. And he's from Queens, well, actually originally from Taiwan, but lives in Queens. And when I asked Sherman if he wanted to participate in the project, he did, and he shared a story, and he wasn't sure why he was sharing it. So he was playing basketball. This is Sherman back behind the fence. And Sherman was playing basketball with some neighborhood guys, people he didn't really know. And one of the guys just sucker punched him. They like out of the blue. I don't know if it broke his nose, but he was injured. He showed me the shots that he took to document, or that they took at the police station. And at the time he said, and I asked him if he thought it was racially motivated, the sucker punch, and he said he didn't know. He didn't think so at the time, but when I was asking about it, he didn't know. And when the week that I started this painting, there was it was during the time of the pandemic, and there was a lot of anti-Asian sentiment and violence being perpetrated against random Asian people living out their lives in the streets. And so I thought it was really important to combine his story of the violence, which happened many years before, but with these things that were happening in the news now. So the people that you see on the other side of the fence are actually from closed circuit TV closed circuit cameras that had captured these acts of violence, and I've got them like from news pages on the internet. And so you can find these are stories that were all over the national news. And this is the actual, he lives in Queens, and it was during the pandemic, no one was traveling. I got the Google Maps street view of the basketball court where this happened. And so some of these are actual street signs from the place, but some of them are ones I slipped in there because I wanted to talk about. There's, like I set the basketball court on fire. It felt like during that time the world was on fire for a lot of different reasons. The pandemic, all the violence that was happening at the time, and I could imagine people feeling like a fear about just being who they were. And so the painting is on fire, the world is on fire, and the signs are, falling all over the street. There is definitely political motivation in this, as you might notice by this did happen on, I believe it was 45th and some other street number, but the stop sign positioned near the 45th Avenue, and that number representing the person who was the president at the time. And I don't know what your politics are, and the painting is not meant to be a political affront to people, but reflective of things that were happening in that day. And I don't apologize for having my own political views, but so that's the the backstory for this painting. Do you have any questions about it? Yeah.
So like, does the cat represent anything? Because I was drawn to the cat.
That's a good question. Not really. Like sometimes I liked it. Like it felt fearful, and underneath the sign, so it says danger, and you've got like. It normally we don't have street signs, beware of someone punching the other guy's lights out, but I thought I created that so it mimic what's happening here, and then the cat is on high alert.
Yeah, so it's kind of like,
Yeah, sorry.
it's kind of like a representation of fear, because like a lot of cats do that.
It is a representation
really
of that
like
fear. Thank you. That you had a question, and then you did too. So. No, go ahead.
I noticed a lot of the street signs, and some of the signs are in the characters.
Yes.
Chinese?
He speaks Mandarin. I don't remember. I think they're numbers, but I did at the time know what I looked up the numbers that I was writing. If anyone does.
I studied Japanese,
Oh,
but like I
okay.
know that like Japanese kanji and other languages share like similar characters, and I noticed that does say 45.
Okay.
This one specifically.
Great, thank you. Thank you for educating me about my own. I should have looked this stuff up because I have it all written down, but I did that. And on the plates, it has particular meaning too. But again, I don't remember what that is. Yeah.
So those are symbolic.
It is symbolic for
not
sure.
actual signs that were there at the.
This was an actual sign there, but I changed the numbers. This was an actual sign there, and I altered it. Stop all way. I don't remember I don't think if they say all. If they did, that one didn't say all way, but I put that intentionally. So all of these other signs I introduced in the painting to add more like that sense of chaos and perilousness and danger. Do you have a question?
I was just about to ask about the signs because I take Japanese right now, and I also saw the 45,
yes.
and then there's also behind it, it's in katakana, and katakana in Japanese is only for foreign words.
Oh, okay.
So
Interesting.
I can't pronounce it, but I know what it's trying. Like the first character is one is one most of the time. So I don't know what the other two
It
are.
might have been like 100 and whatever street.
Yeah, so that was the only thing I was gonna ask
Thank
about.
you so much.
Like a
Yeah.
number.
Yeah.
It probably is a number. Yes. Any other questions about this painting? You have another? It might have been 83rd
Looks,
Street.
yeah, it looks like 83 right here.
I'm so glad you guys are here.
I was gonna ask, there's a cooler tone building, a white building in the middle with all the flames. Is there any significance, or was it just like a?
You know, I originally painted the buildings that were back there in the very loose beginnings of the painting, and that most of that got covered up in the fire. I couldn't tell you why I left that little bit. I don't remember, but that doesn't have a particular significance. But I did create the hole in the fence. There wasn't that kind of hole. I thought it was important to separate Sherman on this side of the fence from the other people that were in the news, but creating like that portal between them. Yeah.
How did you do like all the chain link crossing? That looks like really tedious.
It was tedious. It took forever. At first I started, I'm trying to look, I think I did not use, I should have used a straight edge, but I didn't. I tried to do it all freehand. And when you look close, it is kind of wobbly, but it took a long time. And tedious is the right word. Yeah. Well, what other paintings did you want to talk about next? Yeah.
I wanted to talk about your self-portrait over here.
All right, let's meander on this side of the room.
Oh, that's a self-portrait?
It is,
I
yes.
didn't know that. Ow. Ow, my legs.
Yeah, feel free. I'll wait to start talking till everyone's over and comfortable.
Was it this thing?
Yes, this one.
Yeah, I googled what that meant, and it's like curing the bad or something.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Oh my god, that's funny. Curing the bad.
Yes. And there is a story to that, and I'll share that. There we go. All right, so I often do self-portraits. Ever since I was little. But they're a regular part of my practice. Sometimes they're like restorative in between a big body of work and the next body of work. I'll do a self-portrait. And this was part of that, as the break between the us paintings, which were largely about black and brown lives, immigrants, and culturally complex people with culturally complex backgrounds. And this one I started thinking more about women, but also back to myself, because a lot of my issues are back, come from my own experience. And so the title of this one, as you pointed out, is Curándome de lo Malo, Teresa Dunn. And it is like curing myself of the bad. And what I'm doing in this painting is using a molcajete, which is the mortar and pestle, and it's the original like Aztec technology from a few thousand years old that is made from lava rock, and it was used to grind spices, used to grind corn, actually the metate was used to grind corn, but you can grind vegetables and things like that for sauces and salsa. But what you have to do before you actually use it is cure it, curar. And I thought the word for the double meaning of to cure that, and it takes forever. If you ever wanted to cure a molcajete, you're traditionally supposed to start with dried corn, but you can also start with dried rice. Which is, I didn't have access to dried corn, but recently my daughter and I went to visit my family in Guadalajara, and I brought back a molcajete. They took it away at customs. They said it was dangerous, and they took it away from me, so I had to buy one for here. I was wounded by that. But anyway, so I finally ordered a molcajete from Mexico, and then it came, and you have to cure it. So it is a labor of love, curing it. And what happens to you with the rice and the tejolote, which is the pestle, and you rub the rice into it and grind it, and it turns into dust. And you see bits of the lava rock. And you have to then dump that out, repeat until there's no more dust. The last stage is to do it with salt, like coarse salt, and then it's ready to be seasoned, whether you're using it for like savory or sweet kind of use. And part of the reason that I bought it and that I wanted to go through this process, which it's very tedious, like the fence, but I felt like it connected me to my Mexican heritage, and also to the Mexican women that came before me, the indigenous women that and men, and I suppose men and women too, but primarily women, the molcajete, a good one in a family, is passed down from grandmother to mother to granddaughter. But I wanted to connect myself to that history, not only of my Mexican heritage, but the indigenous women that came before me. And because I'm going to tell another part of the story in a minute, related to the indigenous history, but it's a labor of love, and I think about like the things that coming to terms in a good way with my own identity was like rubbing something rough against something else rough until it becomes smooth. And in that curing process is like curing myself of those bad things, like from a kid being called dark meat, wetback, being called taco, things like that. Those comments and questions that weren't very nice, or intending to make a child feel good about themselves, like curing myself of that bad, and curing myself of the bad I felt to myself, because I had a lot of internalized hatred of that side myself, a lot of imposter syndrome, like also like feeling like I was white for so long, and then looking at the mirror and like those photographs, like the rest of my family's white, but they're like, there's me, I'm like clearly brown, like feel like that imposter syndrome, like am I Mexican, like am I American, or what am I, that confusion. So curing myself of all of those things. And as a kid, my mom would put my hair in braids, 2 braids, very like Mexican style, and I hated it then. Because it made me feel even more different. It was bad enough that I looked different than my peers and my friends, but just, I mean, I couldn't wear braids and pull it off and look like my white peers. It made me feel different. But I wanted to embrace and take back my braids and feel proud of that connection. I don't, to the connection to my Mexican heritage. I want to share a little story too. Like a few years ago, I did a 23andMe. The DNA thing is like, what is real? Like, I know I'm Mexican. I know my dad's German and Irish, whatever. And how much indigenous and this and that and the other thing? Like, or do I have any? And I did. I have about 30% indigenous genes, and from my mom, the rest are like from Southern Europe, and from my dad, it's almost entirely German. And even though my last name, which is my dad's name, Dunn, is Irish, and the family heritage claims to be Irish, I had like 0.3% British and Irish. So like, something's not right here. So, but the thing that I thought was really fascinating with that genetic testing, and I can't explain the science, maybe we have a scientist in the room too, but that there's a thing like the maternal genetic line, which is called a haplogroup. So the maternal haplogroup can tell you where your maternal line came from like thousands of years ago. And my maternal line is A2 specifically, but of all the indigenous women, or all the indigenous peoples in the Americas, all the Americas, there are 5 maternal lines. 5 women, 24,000 years or something like that ago, that all of the indigenous populations in the Americas are descended from. And that hit me really hard. Like my mother, her mother, her mother's mother, back 24,000 years to this, our maternal Eve was one of those women who populated the Americas. And I was so humbled by that. Like I said, I get emotional thinking about it, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to celebrate women in my paintings. Woo! Excuse me. But in any way, so a long story short, here we are, me with my braids and my molcajete, and let's see, this is a calandria. I can't think
Canary?
of. No, calandria is a different bird. I don't remember if it's a finch, but is it a finch? We have okay, yeah. So there's the song in Spanish, Yo soy como la calandria que para formar su nido siempre busca ramo fuerte. I'm like the calandria that to make his nest always looks for a strong branch. And so I put the calandria on my arm, becoming that strong branch, and my aguacate, which the guacamole that comes from molcajete there's nothing like it. So anyway, any questions about this? Yeah, go ahead.
So just like hearing everything, like I'm just really like connected to you. I'm also Mexican American, my mom is also Mexican, my father is American, and it's just very nice to hear finally like a story that is like similar and stuff like that. I just have like so many questions. I guess like first, where did you get your molcajete? Because I want to get a molcajete.
I Googled it. It was I can't remember the name of the website, but if you can find me on Instagram and you can message me and I'll send you the site.
For sure. I just also wanted to ask kind of generally, like, what does it mean for you to be Mexican American, and kind of how do you show that to your daughter?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like I grew up, my parents spoke Spanish to each other, but English to the kids. And so I'm not a native Spanish speaker, but I'm a heritage speaker. So I learned, I spoke a little bit as a kid, and I understood a lot, but didn't really start to speak, and it's still kind of clumsy Spanish, but it's like owning that part of my heritage, maintaining my connections with my Mexican family, thinking about traditions that we have, food we have. My daughter's favorite food is tacos al pastor, and she went to Mexico, actually the first time that she was there, this past summer of 2023, and she was nervous because she'd never been there and didn't like the food, and she loved the food. Like, food is one of those connections. Language is harder. Some of her first words, I also speak Italian too, so I tried to speak a lot to her in Spanish and Italian when she was little, and a lot of her first words were in Spanish or Italian. But then once they start going into daycare and school and they realize this language is, I didn't have a community to support the other languages, so she refused to say the words. So that's a little bit harder thing. But talking to her a lot about her heritage, and she's not a brown kid. She tans well, but she's a white kid. She doesn't look Mexican, but she knows she has Mexican heritage. She knows my I guess I call my cousins are like her cousins. She knows primos and tios and all of that, and we talk about them. But I can say that she, I think, is enough removed from the culture where she doesn't feel Mexican. She knows her heritage is, but I don't think she feels that way. So it's a hard thing. And I think language is a huge part of that, and being disconnected from my family is so far away, and her grandparents, my parents live far enough away where she doesn't have that daily opportunity. Like, my mom probably would have spoken to her, and she still speaks. My mom gets confused, like, am I speaking English or Spanish? And like, it's like, Mom, she doesn't understand that. And but yeah, I think that's the hardest part, is like bridging that and trying to ensure that she has those connections. Maybe she'll come to it later, but she's a stubborn kid, so I don't know. No.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions about this painting?
Kind of one similar to that, but you talked a lot about your maternal line
Mm-hmm.
while you were talking about this. Did your role as a mother, and especially a mother to a daughter, kind of shape any way that you were making this, or were you thinking about that, of kind of both looking back and looking forward?
That is such a good observation. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, becoming a mother. My daughter's 11. I came to be a mother later in life. Technically a geriatric pregnancy at 36. But I think a lot about how my becoming a mother and a parent has changed me as a person, as a teacher, and as an artist. So it does absolutely factor in there. Yeah, because I think about that line in the painting that's not here, that was the first long line of women. You can find that online too. She appears in that painting, as does my mother and my maternal grandmother. But I wonder, like, if that line will ever get broken. But it does have a really strong impact on the way I think about women, raising now a middle schooler who will one day be a woman, and hoping to instill her with strength as a human being, kindness, and all of that kind of stuff. So that's a really great observation. Yeah. I actually want to talk about this painting right next to it, because I noticed that some people in the book, the guest book, wrote about this painting being really meaningful for them. One of my childhood friends, Sarah, who is white, when she went to college, moved to New York, and eventually came out as a lesbian, and met her soon to be, or would, I don't know if it's soon to be, but eventually wife. And this painting is called Story of My Life, Monifa Roberts, One Eye Open. And when I asked them to share their stories, they shared the story of them meeting. I have another like really big painting that talks about like one of their early experiences together as a couple before they knew each other that well. But this painting is about Monifa's experience as a Black lesbian Afro-Latina, and who has a biracial son. And she described to me, just as a Black woman in general, especially a lesbian woman, has kind of a daily fear in her life about her own safety and about the safety of her son. Any parent of a young Black man has similar fears about how they will be received in the world. And will they be seen for the kind person, the funny, the smart person, or will they seen as a threat because of their Blackness? And the phrase she used that really stuck with me was that she has to be forever with one eye open, even when she sleeps, because you can't let your guard down. And that image really struck me. And this is one of the most difficult paintings that I painted in all of the work. Thinking about that as, I mean, if you look at the left side of the painting, face relaxed, and the right side, it's very agitated. That eye is not just open, it is wide open. And the idea of moving through life without being able to fully be calm or tranquil or not worry is devastating, and it has significant impact on the psychological, mental, physical health of people, of Black people and Black mothers. And so I wanted to highlight this painting, because I did notice that several people wrote about it. So the colors that I used, I mean, I wanted it to be fairly dark, but also the pink and the green kind of electrify each other, so the light's a little unsettling. It's not quite neon, but it doesn't feel natural, because there's something unnatural about feeling like you always have to have one eye open. Are there any questions or comments about this painting? Yeah.
Like, what is she wearing? Is she like having a jacket on? Because
Yeah.
I don't
Also,
think that's
good
a
observation.
blanket.
So yeah, so Monifa and they live in Brooklyn, and took these photographs in winter. So she was actually wearing a winter coat outside when they did the photo shoot for me. And I left the coat on because I thought it felt like she's ready to go at any time. I mean, because you sleep in comfortable clothes, but putting that coat on her amplified this sense of unease and discomfort.
Ready to fight.
Yeah, somebody else had their hand up in this vicinity, or maybe they moved her.
They said exactly what I was about to
Okay,
say.
all right, yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
Kind of look at the left side. It's very calm. Like there really is sleep and peace. But the other one is like shock.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what might happen?
Yeah, and Monica describes me like feeling every day like that. It's
It'd be scary.
I'm sure it is. How are we doing on time here?
Got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
You brought up Eve, and I just wanted you to address all the apples.
Oh, okay. Maybe we should go to this side of the room and talk about the
Do you
apples.
want to talk about that?
All right, absolutely. We'll start at the tree painting, and then we'll move over to the big one. Yeah, absolutely. I think we're good on time here, so.
Sorry.
Feel free to bring a chair. So, Kira Bush and the Tree of Many Fruits. I guess I forgot to put the subtitle on this one. It's not on the label, but it's in the painting, Allegory of a Family Tree. So Kira Bush is my sister-in-law, and she is the youngest of 5 and the adopted biracial daughter of my in-laws. And my husband's family is white, and Kira, as I said, is biracial. She is white and black. And the thing that she didn't want to talk about, though, was her mixed race. She's very protective of her inner self, and that was something that I don't know that she was ready to talk about with me. But what she did talk about was being an adopted child and having having adopted siblings, her 4 older siblings, including my husband, and also having numerous biological siblings, and some of them being from different father than her birth father. And that caused a lot of internal conflict in herself and feeling of belonging. So the kind of belonging that I talked about with myself, but her conflict and her belonging is more about family and being connected by her childhood and being raised by her adopted family, but being connected by blood to her birth siblings, which she did not meet until she was 18, or they were all above 18. So I wanted to make a painting that invited Kira to love both parts of herself, and I put her as the base of this tree, this enormous tree, which is not an apple tree, but I found this image of this beautiful tree with these magnificent branches, and her arms become the branches of the tree. And it's a tree that bears different fruits. So there's apples, there's peaches, there's cherries, and these are all Michigan fruits from my own photographs of King's Orchard up north in Central Lake, Michigan. But I also put lemons in. My husband criticized me for the lemons. He's like, those aren't Michigan fruits, but they're different. They're different, and I think that is important because Kira does feel that sense of difference, and not that her family doesn't love her, but that she is always aware of being an adopted child and from a family that looks very different from her birth families. So that's the reason for, the fruits, I love using plants, fruits, birds, things like that. They're organic. I feel like they hold a lot of symbolism. They're an object that people bring their own sense of meaning to. Fruits are symbols that can be symbol of fertility and of growth. And if they're not rotting, I guess goodness. And so that's the story behind this painting. Do you have any questions about it? Yeah.
Was her shoe off in this one just because it's being a part of that branch, or was there a reason, or is it just okay?
No, you're right. I took that shoe off because I wanted it to blend in more with the roots of the painting. Yeah. Yeah. Other questions? All right. Should we turn to the big one?
Yeah.
So the several paintings I've done recently have been these massive panorama. This one is 4 feet tall by 20 feet long, and the 4 different panels. The longest one that I've done like this was 24 feet. But I started, thinking about all of these stories that have so much density in them. There's so many the depth to people's lives and experience and the way they move through the world. And it felt like, as I kept going, that one canvas couldn't contain all that I wanted to share. And this painting starts to move into the Long Line of Women series, and it's named simply Morgan, Megan, Claire, Leah, a long line of women. That's the name of the 4 women in the painting. And these are all graduate students of mine at Michigan State. And all 4 were in the same year, although Leah has since moved back to the East Coast. but I became really close with them. They were in a seminar with me, and I got to watch them grow over the course of last year and grow their friendship, see their dynamic in class, see their dynamics change and evolve. And I wanted to celebrate, as I was starting to think more about these long lines of women, both my personal lines and the women that I was seeing, that I was interacting with on a daily basis, women I admire, and how beautiful their relationship was. And so I asked them if they wanted to participate in my painting project, and they all agreed. And so we did several, like a photo shoot, and did several different fun things throughout the shoot. And there were too many good photos I couldn't like narrow it down to one. And I was thinking about too, like my experience with them across that first year and how it evolved. And so you'll see the women fluctuate from front to back, looking at each other, sometimes looking out at the screen, looking down, not out at the screen, out at like you, out at me, out at you, inward to each other. And it's not a specific story, but it's the kind of the vibe that I get from them and their relationship to each other as they like investigate their own artwork and grow as people. And that idea of growth, again, like with the question of the apples, I love the painting the fruits, but again, it was this sense of growth and possibility and fertility, not in the way of like procreation, but fertility in the way of like growth of ideas and relationships and friendships. So they, like, I populated everything like with the plants on the bottom, the flowers, the apple trees, and the women as they kind of meander through the space. And so that's the overview of that painting. Does anyone have any questions or observations? Yeah, go ahead.
The young woman here with the glasses.
Yeah, Morgan.
She looks like she's really looking at us.
Yeah.
But she looks identical to that one. I mean, the
She
pose
is
and
the
everything.
same person.
She is. It's the same pose. I'm just like fascinated with that. Morgan owns any room she's in, and she saw yellow was her color, and I brought some props for them to use if they so wanted for the photo shoot, and I brought a yellow umbrella, and she's like, I'm taking that, and popped it open, and she had her yellow Crocs on, and just like that pose was such a confidence and confidence in herself and at ease and super chill. And I love that photograph and that pose. And I am making individual portraits of all the women in this painting. The first one I did is the portrait of Morgan, but I substituted the background. That one over there is called Morgan Hill All Yellow. And I wanted to amp up the chill vibe, so I put her in a beach. And that is a canary, I think. So somebody was talking about canaries earlier, and a yellow bug. And because I thought it was such a beautiful portrait of an incredibly strong and confident woman. And I just love that umbrella and how she, carried it. And it's not like a protective gesture, but one of confidence and strength, and that look outward too.
Got another question about the birds.
Yeah.
Now, I think I've seen 3 paintings here with birds.
Mm-hmm.
Was the bird something you envisioned before you started the whole process, or was that like toward the end it just popped into your head?
I don't know why I'm preoccupied with birds. I don't really know anything about
like
them.
them.
I just love them as a symbol. Sometimes, like the grande over there, I in the painting I just talked about, the self-portrait, there is a reason for it. Other times, this one it was purely because it was yellow, but they represent kind of freedom. And I think they're the wings, and sometimes I'll put them flying in a painting, and they have just a beautiful gesture. And so at times there's a specific reason, but other times I just think they're really incredible forms. Yeah, you haven't asked a question yet?
I was just curious, these are all real people with real stories,
Yeah.
and so they must have seen these paintings, and I was just curious of what
Yeah.
kind of like reaction or feedback or like what the response, and you said you kind of worked with them along
Oh,
the
yeah,
way, but like, what
everyone's-
has it been like for them to see themselves in this light?
So far all the reactions have been good, and I don't know if that's because they like don't want to hurt my feelings, but I know seriously, like people they share the paintings, like they'll tag, like they want to be tagged in them, and they're proud of their stories being shared. So yeah, I think that for people to see themselves in the painting is really important to me, and to feel like they're accurately represented. That's absolutely important. First you and then you.
This isn't really a question, but I really like how there's a really strong sense of light and shadow in this. I really like the lighting, especially in the middle one where it's the two middle pieces where the girls are all holding hands. Yeah, I really like that one.
Yeah, so we did one photo shoot where they were outside and kind of interacting together, and we went to each person's studio and they each did something different depending on the studio. And in Leah's studio, she was handing them out something, like it was this beautiful gesture of sharing, and I loved that circle. I don't remember what it was that she was putting their hands, but I took it out, but just the hands open to receive. There's something beautiful about that, and I want to have positive representations of women's relationships, because so often we're competitive with each other, and as I mentioned, like raising a young daughter, I hope to instill quite like the idea of care, and there's nothing wrong with feeling, to succeed and being competitive, and I'm very competitive, but and I don't let my daughter win games when we play. She has to learn the rules and win on her own terms, but I'm always sad for her when she loses, but she often beats me, so that's she's getting better. You had a question too.
Yeah, that lady with the green, like her foot, right here. I saw that was what you played, and then this one is beautiful.
Yeah, while I primarily right now, I didn't always use photographs. I used to paint mostly from life, but I primarily use photograph, but copying the photograph isn't as important to me as representing how things feel. And I'm so in love with paint. Like sometimes like just that rough paint, I'm glad you noticed that. I was wondering if people would see that. Yeah. But I loved painting this foot, but I also loved how rough that was, and it felt like a foot. It didn't need to be more. And so you'll often find in the paintings that there are areas left open and other areas that are closed down tight, and not everything, it's not about the exact photographic representation, but about how things feel, and about how they emote, for sure. Yeah.
I think Dan was wondering that earlier too, like on the umbrellas. That's why you didn't copy the texture over, because it was too busy, probably.
Partly that, and partly because it was tedious, like the fence, to do all those little designs and other. I just wanted here. I think it would have been too much. But the yellow shape and the texture, I don't like to paint the same thing the same way, because you can see Morgan has the same shirt in those, but that one's really tight, and this one is more like abstract, kind of big swaths of shape. Yeah.
So I believe you said you did this one first and then that one after, right?
I may have said that, but I think I did that one first and then this one after.
Okay.
So
I was just wondering, because the shades in the shirt are like very different. And
Yeah.
that they're like a patchy orange and a neon green, and well, then that one's very like.
Yeah, I amplified the temperature here. That one's more accurate to the shirt, and this one's more inventive with the color. Yeah. You first, then you.
I know with the other piece, the one with like the waves, I know you mentioned like you didn't know why you did like 2 of them, but I see like you do like a lot of like the narrative like painting. So I know in this one, so you had like a whole bunch of like poses and shots, so you didn't want to choose one. But have you always done like the narrative paintings, or if not, if so, like what led you like to do that, or was it just like
I guess
I've
upon a piece?
Yeah, I've always been interested in painting people ever since, and even when I was a kid, my mom saved all these drawings I did, and I pictures of these people I've been, and sometimes it's a real person, other times they're characters I invent. But since I went to school and was an undergrad, and I started taking painting classes, I loved painting the model and painting portraits. They initially started off more as portraits, and the longer I've been painting, the more they became like these narrative stories. And the more now specific stories that have become.
I relate to you in that because I do portraits right now, but I want to get more like this. Yeah.
Great. Your question?
Mine was just really small. I just noticed the woman in green is holding a jar of pickles, and I wondered if there was a funny story with that.
There is. So Megan is a sculptor, ceramicist / installation artist, and one of her works that she did in the fall was these little miniature, like they were half landscape and half like kitchen or something like that, or interior. So these weird interior exterior things, and they had a hole in them. One of them was made from porcelain, and the other was what did she call it? It was like paper clay, so a little like half paper mache, half clay, and left holes in it. And in one of them, she put a jar of pickles. And her work is about her. She's from Arkansas, and a lot of it thinks about back to her memories of growing up, and her grandmother's kitchen. And pickles are symbolic for her. They're really personal for her. And in the photo shoot, she was holding a prop of an alligator head, and I was like, that just doesn't feel right. But after I saw her show with the pickles, and I'm glad you recognized them pickles because I wasn't sure if it was coming across. But so I put the pickles in her hand. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just interested in some basic things about process and stuff. You talked about how your ideas come from dialogue and things. So, and then you take photographs. Do these things start to coalesce in drawings? Do they start to develop a bit right on the painting? And how much do you allow for change and development? I mean, you just talked about it just now, but you know, a little bit about how you normally will work your way into compositions, interactions, and things like that.
That's a great question because it fluctuates. So sometimes take a picture and I'll know right away, even as I'm taking the picture, what I want the painting, the direction to go in. But the composition sometimes develops through a drawing. Sometimes it's like the drawing comes first, and then I find the source material to fit the compositional idea I have in my head, or I'll get a compositional idea from a movie or another painting, like back to like Renaissance Baroque. And sometimes I'll do a rough collage in Photoshop. I never spend a lot of time in Photoshop though, because I hate the computer. And it's just so tedious, and it's never exactly what happens in the painting. I do leave room. There's always room for something to happen on the painting. That the apples and all that was not the first thing that happened. And so I had some of the, like I made her a lot bigger in this. There was a completely, which one of Megan did I change? This one was a totally different pose, and I hated it. I painted her all out and painted her back in. There's and with Leah too. The original wasn't working, so there's a lot of room. Like the earlier stages of my paintings are pretty open. There's a lot of room to change. I don't like to have it closed down. If I get too fussy right away, then I don't change things that need to be changed. So I'm using, with a painting this size, my first brushes are like the gesso brush, sometimes like house painting brush size. Block it in, take a big knife, slather it over.
So you're not like kids do. So you're not like, before you like paint stuff on, you're not like drawing like the outlines with pencil, right?
No,
how do you do that? Like
sometimes I will sketch it out with paint, but I almost there are times when I need to get the face right, and I might draw it out more carefully, or it's not working and I redraw it on top of the paint. But I do, and actually these red lines that are around the foot, that came from redrawing Megan, because it was just such a horrible like painting of her. I was painting her horribly, and I needed to redraw it to figure it out. But I'm so I guess I don't like I said, copying the photograph and having something baked prematurely before. I think part of me, the creative process is about the journey and how things develop along the way. So I very rarely draw things out and they stay in the same way. And I don't like using pencil to draw out, especially if something's so large. It feels too small a tool for that.
Like, what do you do if you make a mistake, though?
There are no mistakes. There's just things that happen and how you respond to it. But like this, like I painted it all out and repainted it over again. So, Anne, you had a question?
Well, just the logistics. You said you don't have a very big studio, but you've done a 20-foot piece, and so you're working on one of them. Or do you do two at a time?
I have room to put two up at a time because I want at the seam to match up. And I can't even put two flat. They have to be kind of in a corner. So it takes me forever to get the easels right so they're at the same level. And it's really tedious because like swapping them in and out. But all of these, I don't want one panel to get in front of the other. So each day I'm in my studio, I'm like a different one, changing them around so they kind of all grow together. This is the first time, I was telling Denise earlier, that I've seen all of these together. I will take pictures of them and kind of stitch them in Photoshop. It's like, does that look good? I don't know, and make changes based on that. But I've never seen them all together until today. Yeah.
How long would you estimate it took to do this?
This one took a long time. A few months, but I don't usually keep track. But I did start it in 2023 and finished it 2024. So it takes a while. The smaller ones, like this, probably took a month. But I was on leave, so I wasn't teaching. So I was in the studio every day. A smaller one could take me a week or 2 weeks if I have a lot of studio time. But usually on the smaller, and I would say that's small for me, month if I'm teaching, but less time if I can be in the studio every day. I felt like I saw a hand over here, you know? Yeah.
Do you use mediums in your paint? And if you do, at what point do you start implementing that?
I do. Lately I use a lot of liquid. I know you're not supposed to because it yellows and it's can be brittle. But I like it because it dries quickly and the next day it's dry. And I like the paint to be all wet in the same day that I'm painting, but I want it to be dry the next layer. But my preference is linseed oil, and I have this stuff that's like beeswax that's been dissolved in a solvent, and I like mixing that into my linseed oil because it kind of creates a buttery texture, but I haven't been using it lately. But I do use liquid, and on the first layers of paint, I use more. And again, it's not good for you too because I have an air purifier in my studio to pull the solvent fumes out of the air. But the first layers, on some paintings you can see the first layers are quite thin, and I use less and less medium as I go on because I really love the thick texture of the paint and those surfaces that are rough. And as much as it's fun to paint a detail, it's so much fun to layer gloppy, thick paint, and there's just something about it that looks good enough to eat. But don't eat it. Yeah.
Here's another question.
Sure.
Are there any painters that were important to you in the development of your work that you go back to as almost like artistic mentors or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first loves as an art student were like Caravaggio and Lucian Freud, Paul Rego. I love Jennifer Packer these days. A huge fan of her work. I'm blanking a little bit. Oh, Matt Bollinger has some great paintings. But Yeah, so I have a lot of people that I look to. Oh my gosh, is Henry Taylor, Njeka Akinwumi Crosby. Let me think. There's another Noah Davis, Lynette Yadiyombayachi. So many like wonderful. So my younger years, I was really interested in Renaissance and Baroque painters, and a lot of the complexity in my paintings comes from being inspired by Tiepolo, for example, a Venetian painter. And there's in Venice, which there's in the Accademia there's a really long scroll painting. It's probably longer than this, but my fascination with that painting invariably like is coming somewhat from that. But more recently, I'm also really interested in artists of color too, and so I'm looking to black and brown painters, and which is the last several people I mentioned are, and so I really am more conscious about who I'm looking at and thinking about the kind of stories that I'm painting and the dialogue that I want my paintings to be surrounded in. Yeah.
You spoke about, or you referenced, if I have a lot of studio time, and I know that you're a mother, you're a teacher, you have a complex amount of responsibilities that you have to tend to. I'm curious how do you habituate your practice, and if you do, and how you force time into your life to make this happen, because I know as someone with a similar set of things.
So pre-kid, pre-husband, I could paint whenever I wanted, all day long, whatever. And I probably wasted a lot of studio time. But now, I mean, like I said, I'm a mother and an artist and a teacher, and I'm also a graduate director. Don't ask me why I wanted to torture myself. I love the grad students, so that's why I wanted to torture myself. But so I do follow a schedule, and if I don't, then I don't get work done. But Monday, my daughter goes to school. I'm in the studio, then I eat lunch, and then I'm in the studio, and then she comes home from school. And then, her homework or whatever, and we hang out, and I lose at Uno or a memory game or something like that. But and Tuesday I teach all day, and then I have other, school work to do. Wednesday again, like Monday and Wednesday are my studio days. Tuesday, Thursday I teach. And Friday, theoretically, could be a studio day, but it's often days with meetings, meet with students, catch up on other computer work. So in the semester, I'm really only painting 2 days a week, but when I'm in there, I am like focused and getting it done, and there's no time wasting, because I just don't have the time to waste. I'm not a nighttime painter, so after dinner, we hang out, watch TV, play a game, do homework, whatever it is, but I can't work after just get too tired. Plus I want to spend time with my family, so. Yeah.
So you said that you do, obviously a lot of portraits of women, and you said ones that are close to you. Have you ever done like a portrait of your daughter and her story then?
She does not like me to talk about her or look at her the wrong way. She gets really upset with me. I don't know if it's really upset, but I have put her in some paintings. She's like, "Why'd you put me in that?" And I'm very conscious of that if it's herself. So I try to, even if I'm just like in my sketchbook and we're hanging out and I'm just drawing a little portrait of her, she's like, "Don't look at me." So what am I gonna do? But yeah, she doesn't want me to paint her story. Yeah. What other questions? Or is there a painting? Let's see what time we've got. Maybe we could talk about one more painting. Yeah.
We talked about that one.
Yeah, let's go all the way to the corner. Red and green. Oh, I'm not gonna stand there.
No, that was me. I wasn't you.
Yeah.
All right, so this painting is called Love is Sweet with Brittany Reason, and the subtitle is an alternative Doljanchi K-drama, and this is Korean text. And Brittany is a friend of a friend, so I didn't know her before I made this painting, but her the person I knew actually was my daughter's preschool, daycare / preschool teacher the year before she went to kindergarten, Miss Lee, and we loved Miss Lee. And when I started the project, Chloe was already in school, so I never knew Brittany. But when I asked for people to participate in the project, Miss Lee said, I've got a friend who's going to want to share her story. And she introduced me to Brittany. And Brittany came over and we sat on my porch. Again, pandemic time. I'm going to step away from the door because it keeps opening on me. So we sat on the porch and Brittany shared that her dad is Korean, but he was adopted into an American family when he was an infant. And so he has absolutely zero organic connection to his Korean heritage, language, culture, anything. And so Brittany's mom is white, and Brittany, so she's half Korean, half white, and with no connection, again, because her dad was adopted to her Korean heritage, and that caused her a lot of conflict. Very similar, in fact, we talked about our own stories. Although I'm not adopted, we both felt this conflict about being in between, or being something and being both, or what am I, who am I, and had a constant sense that, like, she felt also very racially ambiguous, that she doesn't look quite white, but nobody can quite tell what she is, and it really troubled her, both like the physical thing, but what hurt her most was that she didn't have a connection to her Korean heritage. And she told me about the Doljanchi ceremony or celebration. So it's traditional when Korean babies turn 1. Their celebration, which is I'm probably mispronouncing it, but Doljanchi ceremony, and the doljabi are the items. So there are items that have symbolism, and there are some traditional ones, and then there are contemporary ones. And some of the traditional items are like a gavel for wisdom, a paintbrush for artists, money for wealth. The rice means abundance. There was a specific meaning for thread, but I don't remember what that is offhand. But each item represents a possible destiny. And the child is placed with the objects in front of them, and whatever they gravitate towards and grab is supposed to be their destiny. And I asked Brittany what she thought would have been her destiny. And while it's not one of the traditional items or symbols, she said love. And so I found this heart made of is like a sewn a traditional like silk and a Korean craft, and had her crawl. And she actually, this is a pandemic again, and so like, can we recreate a Doljanchi? Could give you a Doljanchi ceremony right here in my front yard right now. And so she was on all fours, like crawling and reenacting this ceremony. And I painted like her family members and the balloons and this festive, like trying to reconnect her with the thing that she never had. So she's what's the right word? I guess taking agency of her own identity and reliving that and trying to actualize that ceremony that didn't happen for her, or likely her father. I also have the family. Everybody's a little bit kind of washy and in the distance, but as you move across the picture plane, and it really opens up, these are the first layers of paint, and then you move to here, and you have there's on social media you see like in Korean pop culture, the gesture like this is finger heart. And so I put an unknown, possibly ancestor in traditional Korean clothing doing the finger heart. She's reaching for the heart. The hand is almost touching, but not quite, Brittany's hand, as a gesture of that, both the closeness but the gap between her and her heritage. And the follow-up to this story, at the time Brittany wasn't married and wasn't a mother yet, but in the meantime, since I made this painting, she got married, got pregnant, has a daughter, and on her daughter's first birthday, she felt empowered to give her the Doljanchi ceremony and began reconnecting with her Korean heritage. And I just feel so much joy for her to make those steps, to, like the question you asked me about my Mexican heritage, and something that she's giving her child and herself to feel more of a whole person and embrace those many sides of the self. Does anybody have any other questions about this community? I really thank you so much for all your questions and your time and your interest. I've loved chatting with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Teresa, and thank you so much to you all for being here. Thank you for your incredibly insightful observations and questions, and I really loved the like how closely you looked at things and how carefully you observed and questioned what we have going on here in the gallery. So thank you all so much. Please stay and eat more snacks, chat with Teresa, ask more questions if you want to ask more questions, and just have fun. Thank you.